For a long time, I've known fiat, this dirty money, it's just toilet paper. It's just monopoly money. Sold absolutely every crypto that I've ever had. Ethereum's never going to flip Bitcoin. The XRP army, they're so totally delusional. And I started seeing that people had bought into the matrix or the psyop or the propaganda, the misinformation that was going out there. Is all just 100% marketing. Okay, nothing else matters. It's Bitcoin only.
I love your journey.
I'll stop you there. I won't go into it. I think the biggest motivation, Robin, is when you really start to understand.
Can you remember the first moment you heard about Bitcoin?
Yeah, man. So way back in the day, I don't know what price it was in US dollars, but it was either $94 or $96 Australian. I was pretty sure it was $94 Australian. Wow. And I used to work on cruise boats, diving and things like that, taking people out on guided dive tours, snorkel tours, things like that. Anyway, we're cleaning the boat up after a trip, and I must have just heard about Bitcoin maybe the week before or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin. It's $94, this magic internet money. Everyone was talking about Bitcoin at that stage as magic internet money. And I didn't, bro. Unfortunately, ended up spending that money on something that impaired my mind, my judgment. Read between the lines. A lot of people through Bitcoin probably go through that journey there. So I wasted that money, and then every week I'd be like, I'll buy some Bitcoin. It sort of hung around that price for quite a while. I remember it under $120 Australian for a long time, and then we bought some Bitcoin, and we ended up using it on Silk Road for things that also weren't good for my mind. And that just went, you get a CD case in the mailbox with what was ordered, and that was the end of it, basically. And then didn't think much about Bitcoin for many, many, many years. And man, I can't really recall what year that was, but then I was running these underwater jet skis. They're called sea bobs. And James Bond, they get like shot out of the submarine and they hang on to it. And they're like this underwater scooter, but a very fast one. So I was running a couple of islands up in the Whitsundays here in Australia on the Great Barrier Reef, doing that. And I just went on holiday for a break down south, down to Byron Bay. It's like where a lot of movie stars and stuff go. And I ended up running into someone, a friend's friend. So I was borrowing a friend's van. He said, I've just got a friend that's an internet entrepreneur, and I won't go into what he did. Very wealthy man, seen a lot of money in his life that most people, even here in Bitcoin, will probably never see. And we were talking. I ended up living with him for quite a while and helping him buy a property and his farm and things like that, and helping him to just sort of get back into reality, because he had been behind a keyboard and a computer screen for many years making this empire, and he had just sold it, and they had offered to pay him in Bitcoin, but he said, no, I'll take dollars. Anyway, we went our own ways after about 3 months and went back up, ended up meeting my wife and things like that. And I gave him a call one day and said, mate, I've got $400 here. What stock should I invest in? He's like, no, man, I don't tell my friends what to invest in, because if it goes wrong, they're going to blame me for it. I said, it's $400. I'm happy to throw it down the toilet. Like, for a long time, I've known fiat, this dirty money, it's just toilet paper. It's just monopoly money. I've thought that since a very young age. I said, man, he's like, no, I'm not telling you. I'm like, bro, it's literally going in the toilet. And I was dead set if he didn't tell me, I'd flush it down the toilet. I was well willing to do that. There's a little bit of extra money. Didn't care if I lost it. So he's like, I'm not into stocks. I'm into crypto. And I'm like, okay, what crypto? And he was developing, on one of those shit coins out there. And I bought it at that stage, and I got a 10x really quickly with that. And so I'm like, what is this crypto thing? And then I Googled it, and like, Bitcoin was the first crypto to ever be invented. So I'm like, okay, what is Bitcoin? And then just started going down that rabbit hole so deep, man. And, a couple of hours turns into hundreds, which turns into thousands of hours. And so by that stage, I'd realized that Bitcoin was unique. It was the first time that scarcity had ever existed on planet Earth. I understood that, but I was still caught up in that mind virus of crypto. And I played that altcoin casino and spent, a couple of thousand hours within crypto going down that rabbit hole. And I'm sort of ashamed to say it, but it worked out pretty well for me. I was in the markets every day, and I started to realize there's mainly narrative. It did take a while. I still saw some of the things I thought they had utility, and, I bought Ethereum at mainly under $100, but a lot of it under $400, sort of sold it right near the top, which was good, above 4,000. So that was amazing. But all those profits, I just kept putting straight back into Bitcoin because I knew Bitcoin was something different. And the more I studied it, the more I realized it was Bitcoin only. And then it took me a long time, I'm sad to say, to be able to totally clear my mind and move away from the crypto side of things and go 100% Bitcoin only. Sold absolutely every crypto that I've ever had. There's probably some dust in some MetaMask somewhere, wherever, however to get into that MetaMask, I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry if I swear, you can bleep that out. But it took so long to be able to get past that. And then I just realized everything else is garbage. It's only propped up on hopes and dreams, the narrative. Ethereum's never going to flip Bitcoin, the XRP army, they're so totally delusional. And I started seeing that people had bought into the matrix or the psyop or the propaganda, the misinformation that was going out there. It was all just 100% marketing. And then I just went in 100% into crypto. Obviously, the C19 dip was an amazing time. By that time, I'd already understood what Bitcoin was. It drops down to 3,300 or 3,600. And I said to my wife, sweetie, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We had a fair amount of cash in the bank and stuff, and we just put it all into Bitcoin. Pretty much at that stage, I was still... I don't know how to say it politely, but I was fucking around with the shit coins in that altcoin casino. You're going to need to do a lot of bleeping. My apologies, but from there, once you start to put a large sum of money for whatever that is for anyone, you start to realize, okay, nothing else matters. It's Bitcoin only, and then the rest is history. It's been an amazing couple of years, and I guess that's the journey thus far.
I love your journey. You also told me this last time when we met, and I was like, I have to share the story also with other people. And did the seeing the Bitcoin price going up that far from the first time you heard about it, and then you got it, and then with the altcoins, did this motivate you even more than now make so many videos, to meet so many Bitcoin minds, and actually educating a lot of people? Is that a motivation you have for doing that extra work?
I think the biggest motivation, Robin, is when you really start to understand the distortion that the Fed's gone down over the last 110 years, how they've slowly but steadily, systematically destroyed the fiat currency, this dollar. When we went off the gold standard, the debasement happened like World War I. World War I started a couple of years after the Fed was created. Since then, they've been slowly going down, making the money worth less and less and less. And everyone thinks, it's still, not everyone, most people are awake, but a lot of people think it's still backed by something. It's fiat, it's backed by decree, it's backed by the power of the military, fear of imprisonment, no intrinsic value. A lot of people think it is. But when you see clearly how they've distorted people's reality, because so many people spend their entire lives working for what they think is money, it's only a currency. As they're working for currency, they think they're saving. I think COVID was a really big wake-up call for everyone. They printed so much money, everyone thought it was really good to get free money handed to them, deposited into their bank account, and then the price of everything skyrocketed. The people that already had large reserves of cash were already into hard assets, gold, fine art, fine wine, real estate, things like that. Those property prices soared. Like our house was sideways for ages in price value in dollar terms. We're not going to sell. And it pretty much doubled like in a matter of months, within a year, the price, and it didn't do anything at all, and it's still overvalued. It should probably come down about 50% of the gain that it had, like a couple of $100,000 there. But when you see that, you realize, okay, like for the generation, for anyone that's worked their whole entire lives, they've got a whole lot of money in the bank. Your parents, my parents, our grandparents, or somebody our age, Robin, that's working so hard for this funny money, without realizing that they need to do something. Like everyone needs to become a sophisticated investor, but basically until Bitcoin. But they think because of the PSYOP operation Choke Point 2.0, the distortion of the lies that have gone out there in regards to Bitcoin has led people astray. So I guess the purpose of the mission, or to be able to get up every day and get the signal out there as loud and as clear as possible, is for people to realize that something's not right. And people feel that, but they don't know what that is. And then when they understand that it's the fiat currency, then they start asking questions. And the more times people hear about Bitcoin, eventually they're going to be like, okay, it's not a tulip bubble anymore. It's not going away. What is it? They start studying it. Even 10 hours of studying Bitcoin, you're going to have a pretty good idea about how the world works. 100 hours, probably better than, 95% of the population. As you exceed that, people just really wake up and like, okay, I need to get as much of this as possible. So while we are still so cheap, we're only at $44,000 Australian, or 43,500, whatever it is at the time of recording. It fluctuates, it's volatile, doesn't mean it's risky, but it's only at a $800 something billion market cap. It's tiny, it's absolutely small, and it is the best form of money or asset that's ever been created. So I guess that's the drive, the impetus to be able to wake up, show up every day, and allow people to keep their own conviction and get them to read the books, because the agendas that are coming out, 2030, own nothing, be happy, eat the bugs, that scares me, man. Like, I care for the fellow human being. And, like myself, other people may hear about Bitcoin and then get psyoped with crypto, and then they go down that crypto rabbit hole. It's the wrong way. Maybe if you hear about crypto and you come to Bitcoin, like my journey, it ends well. But for most people that hear about Bitcoin then go down the crypto rabbit hole, it's going to destroy them long term. For most people, there are sophisticated traders out there that understand the markets, that play it. That's their profession, but that's a price or a pay to play. They've spent the money, they've learned and made the mistakes. They're in the markets every day. For the average person, I just want, for me, and obviously it's not financial advice, but just to study Bitcoin as much as possible, because it's just time. Time's all it takes to understand that this is unique. Humanity's never seen it before. And it, as Nico Moran says from Simply Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin or slavery. Like, that's it. There is no other option. There's nothing else out there. But for that, people need to take 100% personal self-responsibility for their thoughts, their actions, the information they consume, and where they direct their time and their energy.
That's beautifully said. Bitcoin or slavery. So how will Bitcoin change the political landscape in the world, maybe also in Australia? I heard that in Australia was the COVID-19 lockdowns really heavily. It's just something I heard when sitting in Europe. I don't know how much is true about that. What will change over the time when we are more and more on a Bitcoin standard? The way of the government of printing the money and having this hidden tax to steal purchasing power of the people is not there anymore. What are the major things that can change?
Yeah, a couple of things. So in regards to C19, where I live, like I live in a town, there's about 20, 30,000 people, sort of the tail end of the Great Barrier Reef. Our mayor and stuff was pretty good and didn't stop, like the world didn't shut down where I live. However, that was very unique in Australia. There's places like Melbourne and stuff where they basically brought in the military police to be able to control people. Anyone listening to the mainstream news got totally, again, I use the word psyops. They got totally misled or programmed to be able to think and act a certain way. And it destroyed people's lives, not in the way, like a lot of people got JobKeeper or some type of allowance so they could keep living. But when everyone gets so isolated and you can't see friends and family, or every time anyone coughs or sneezes, naturally you get that fear that you're going to catch this deadly disease that we won't go into it too deeply. But when they put that level of fear into people, then people become so isolated, and the mental health and the fear that's going on, and you still see it today, Robin. Those people are more so a shell of who they used to be. They're not as strong within themselves mentally or psychologically as what they were. So that's through the money printing, locking away the totalitarian regime that happened. That was through C19. In regards to Bitcoin, how's it changed? The Australian monetary system, the world monetary system. The one thing people need to understand is war's never going away. There's always going to be wars. People, like I think in the last 2,000 years, planet Earth has been at peace about 10 years out of 2,000, and not for 10 years all at once, you know, maybe a year here, 6 months there. So humans by nature will continue to go to war, but when they print so much money, it allows these proxy wars to go on indefinitely. And it's the people that own the shares in Lockheed Martin or Boeing, General Dynamics, any of these things that profit off war. So it makes sense for them to print as much money, for it to go to those companies, for the stockholders to be able to make money. That's just one area. Obviously, the Cantillon effects, those closest to the money printer, when it destroys the rest of people. So say someone's starting out, they just bought a house, they could just afford it, and interest rates were pretty much 0%. And the bank said, hey, you're 30 years old, you can have $1 million mortgage. And they're like, yeah, that's great, I can afford it, that's fantastic. And they can afford food and things, their insurance, everything like that. But then as inflation kicks in, then they jack up the interest rates the fastest time in human history all around the world. Then they can no longer make those repayments. So the cantillionaires, or the people closest that already have hard assets, buy up all those hard assets, and then people are forced to rent. And the wealth transfers that we see keep happening over and over again as we go through these boom and bust cycles. And the money printer is basically what dictates that. The more liquidity out there in the market, the higher, like the stock market's at the all-time highs, and the world's pretty much in a recession, really. And inflation, they reckon it's close to 2%. It's nowhere near. I guess as we go into a Bitcoin standard, they're not going to stop using fiat money, at least in the short term. That's still going to be around as a medium of exchange, not a store of value. But if they have a peg, say for like simple math, like 50% Bitcoin to every dollar that's out there, whatever it is, every $100 or whatever, it's pegged to Bitcoin. They can only print so much. They need to be so careful with the handouts, where they spend their money, where they put that capital. They can't just go around, like say, end of tax year, we see like a lot of new pathways and a lot of new roads being resurfaced and stuff, because governments need to spend that money for a couple of reasons. One, to be seen that they're doing things, but also if they don't spend the money, they're going to get less next year. And no government wants that to happen to them. If we're on a Bitcoin standard, they're more likely to hold on to those cash reserves, as they're going to appreciate over time. But it's like a check that they can no longer continue just to go everywhere. Oh, okay, the money's free, we'll just do whatever we can. It slows all that down. Same with wars. Yes, we need to go to war. Maybe we need to raise bonds from like the Australian population, the US population, wherever it is. But those wars are only going to last until the people are like, all right, you've achieved your mission, you've stopped. Endless money printing, they don't even need to say anything. They don't need any permission. They'll just keep printing the money, keep printing the money, keep printing the money. And it just destroys human civilization, really. So I guess where Bitcoin, and I'm wearing the Bitcoiners Hope shirt today, where Bitcoin gives us hope is it makes them accountable for every single action, every single decision. It's like for people that are employed and the boss says, I don't know, go out and buy, I don't know, a box of paper or whatever, silly example, but say a box of paper. The guy goes out, company credit card, they'll just grab the first box there. They're not looking for the highest quality paper. They're just listening. The sales agent just sells them whatever, or the most amounts of sheets for paper. They just don't care because it's not their money. It's easy money. They go in there, get a task, and then move on to the next. Whereas on a Bitcoin standard, the boss says, we need the cheapest, highest quality paper that you can get, and we need 1,000 reams or whatever within that box. And then people are going to think through their actions a whole lot more. It's going to come down to the individual level, businesses, state, local governments, and worldwide. That's how I see Bitcoin changing things. In regards to wars and stuff, though, people need to realize they're not going to go away. They're just not going to last as long. And it's going to keep people more accountable. If your government's overspending, the people are going to see that. They're going to realize that, you know, Australia is one of the highest tax countries in the world. But they're going to see, okay, all this money, why are we paying tax when they can just print an endless amount of money? Whereas if they've got a certain amount of money and it's increasing each year, or maybe it doesn't, maybe we just get to a point where Bitcoin flatlines. That's a far way into the future. It depends what time frame we're looking at. If that happens, people are more responsible and they're more accountable. So I guess on a Bitcoin standard, that saying or that meme, you can't change Bitcoin, but Bitcoin changes you. That happens on an individual level, corporation level, a local, state government level, and a global level.
Yeah, I'm also curious the proof of work mindset, because I see it when I speak with Bitcoiners, I see it when I'm by myself, I see it by so many people that went into Bitcoin and the previous life. It just like when they discovered Bitcoin fully and they grasp it, they make some change. Like there is something happening in their minds and in their lives. It does not matter if the person is 25 or 30 or the person is 40 or 45. I spoke with either one of those groups, and how can, like, what will change in the Bitcoin landscape maybe more in the near-term future when we have next year a possible Bitcoin spot ETF, we have halving, we have maybe more price action next year. What do you see happening in the near future with all the I kind of feel like it's a perfect storm next year that could come for Bitcoin. Do you see similar things?
Yeah, obviously, Robin, like nothing's certain. Even the Bloomberg analysis are only putting out a 90% certainty that we get the ETF in January. And people like what about that other 10%? If it's a 90% bet, that's pretty bloody good. But everything you just said, so say all the spot Bitcoin ETFs get approved at once, we have the halving, the interest rates come down, they need to start printing money because of the US presidential election. All these catalysts coming, the amount of liquidity on top of all the marketing, we're starting to see it already. Like Bitwise, like I won't be holding the ETF. I just will not be holding the Bitcoin ETF. It's Bitcoin and self-custody only. If you take away one thing, ladies and gentlemen, hold Bitcoin self-custody. Do not keep your seed on paper, put it on steel at least, or titanium's even better. Yeah. But people are going to race to be able to have like hundreds of millions of dollars is going to flow just into Bitcoin marketing alone. I think we've seen this war, and especially like Operation Choke Point 2.0 and what's happening with Senator Elizabeth Warren and Jamie Dimon. Those things that are happening there are, well, they're interesting. But now that BlackRock tapped Gensler on the shoulder and said, hey, like I'm ready to go for a spot Bitcoin ETF, he needs to backtrack a little bit, and he is starting to change his tune. Even when we saw that last video of him on mainstream news, he's like, oh, yeah, the court sort of said we need to revisit it again. And he sort of had a little bit of a laugh there with it. Like, okay, like he's trying to make light of the situation. He's been, for me, I think Gary's been paid to delay, but now BlackRock's ready. It's like, okay, we need to look like there's a reason that we said no in the first place. He's done that pretty effectively. As we get all these catalysts now, it's really going to be the marketing and people like Bitwise, BlackRock, Van Eck, Ark Invest, everyone coming together and being like, actually, like Larry Fink, Bitcoin is hope, or Bitcoin is digital gold. The words coming out of Larry Fink's mouth, love him or hate him, I don't like him, ladies and gentlemen, not in the slightest, but absolutely insane because so many people look up and respect. BlackRock runs the world. Like by GDP, the US and China are in front of him, and then BlackRock is the largest corporation in the world with assets under management. He has an immense amount of power, and people believe in him for whatever reason. They don't see the harm, I guess, they're doing, but having those markets open up, the US market open up, alongside everything that you just mentioned with the money printing, the halving, the US cycles, US presidential election, and then dropping the interest rates, I think it's going to be like something that we've never seen before. You know, often on my channel, I talk about $10,000, $20,000 candles, both to the up and the downside. Max Kai. In some countries, that will happen in US dollar terms. I'm not so certain. More so now than ever, though, it's a possibility. It was never possible before. We've, you know, in Bitcoin for a long time, the institutions are coming this cycle, the institutions are coming this cycle. Never happened. And now it's actually game time. So we'll see. Worst case scenario, January passes, they decline it for whatever reason, and then we get an approval in March. That still lines up right before the halving and in line with everything else. So that may be an opportunity there to be able to stack some sats. You know, yeah. My opinion is people should be stacking when they can stack sats and just chill, enjoy the ride. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be insane, like both in a good way and a bad way. A lot of people are going to get scared. Like on my channel all the time, I say, push the red button when we see, if I can, oh, it's not going there. But on Coin360, when Bitcoin's red, if you push that and you get ready for it psychologically, you're not going to be shaken out by $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 dips to the downside. You realize, okay, this is just part of it. Shorts are liquidated. Longs are liquidated. We can reset and then we can stair step back up the year again. So that's sort of what I see happening, Robin, is it's going to get very volatile very quickly. Once the ETF starts trading, once it's approved, there could be a 6-week gap, up to a 6-week gap. Do we see a dip there? Maybe, but I think that's when the marketing really starts ramping up. We're seeing a little bit now. I think we're going to get more and more and more of that, especially once the SEC says, okay, in 6 weeks you can start selling your ETF. They're just going to be like, okay, it's game time, let's go. And people are going to wake up to the fact that Bitcoin is no longer magic internet money. It is the best performing asset in human history. It's the best asset to ever exist. The first time digital scarcity has ever existed. When we have all these things there, Bitcoin's digital gold, whatever narrative they push, we're going to have the largest institutions in the world marketing Bitcoin for us. So I think fireworks, man.
When there's this famous saying, they first laugh at you, then they join you, then you win, and stuff like that. Yeah. When you see Larry Fink saying Bitcoin is a flight to quality, when you see right. the Bitcoin ETF coming to realization, when you see all the positive things also in the mainstream media kind of happening slowly and slowly, are we in the then they join you part?
Yes and no. Obviously, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Jamie Dimon again, and then they fight you stage still. And that's going to ramp up even more. They're going to get so noisy because I don't know if they realize or not. They think they can stop Bitcoin. There's no stopping Bitcoin. You can't stop Bitcoin. You can just stop yourself from using Bitcoin. I don't know if they know that yet. I have a feeling they sort of do, but they're scared shirtless. So they're doing everything they can to be able to prevent it, delay it, to be able to keep control of their broken money system. Because once people take self-custody of Bitcoin, they're their own bank. They become a self-sovereign individual. So we're going to see this dramatically increase. And I guess one sad thing is if somebody says something bad to you, you hear it straight away and it sticks with you all day. So fear is a heavier emotion. It's a base emotion. It just has more weight to it or more resonance, and you'll carry that with you. Whereas, so they're coming from the fear side. People like Senator Elizabeth Warren, Jamie Dimon. That's the fear side of things. Then we have Larry Fink, Bitcoin is a flight to quality, along with Cathie Wood, everyone else, Michael Saylor, this is the greatest thing in the world. But you need to hear that 3 or 4 times more minimum for it to stick with you as much. But then a little bit of fear will just knock that out, and then you're back into fear again. And I think they're going to have to get really noisy, I guess, with the fear side of things. They do have access to all the mainstream media networks and stuff, but it is starting to change. What Elon Musk is doing, like what a goat, man. Like Elon Musk is just one of these great, amazing people. Like that saying, you're trying to bribe me with money? Me with money? Go fuck yourself, Bob. Like the greatest man. Oh man. And the people like Tucker Carlson and everyone else, love him or hate him, even Alex Jones, one of the most controversial figures in the world, being able to come over text. And then most people are starting to wake up, realize, okay, why are these people being silenced? What are they trying to control? Because the more they try to shut it down, truth will always prevail. It's harder, but for people that are spruiking fear, they're living in fear as well. So they're going to lose energy over time, and truth will set you free. The light will always shine. So maybe it's a little bit dark before the dawn, but once that light comes out, I think that catalyst is going to come in there quickly. I know that's a little bit off tangent, but I guess that's what I see. And then so take the good side, the light side, for an example, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are coming in to market Bitcoin. It's going to be over the Super Bowl. It's going to be before every type of financial YouTube ad. So I've got a Bitcoin YouTube channel. They're going to play their ad before my video, during the video, after my video. They're going to have it in the sidebar. Every time you go and Google, if you're looking at houses, best store of value. If you're looking at gold, best store of value, Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. It's going to go everywhere. It's going to be on billboards, probably the Super Bowl, like I was saying. People need to see it over, an advertisement 9 times before it sticks. And then they need to realize, okay, like I've seen that, the Bitcoin symbol, but until they know that Bitcoin fixes their problem, so it'll probably take a little while, because we need to uncover or unpack all that propaganda programming. But it's happening because there's so much money to be made from people like BlackRock and stuff. I'm not saying they're good. All I'm saying is they're good for Bitcoin adoption and price. My only hope is people like yourself get the signal out here. You need to hold it in self-custody, not your keys, not your coins. That's hard. That's scary for some people. There's people out there like the Bitcoin Way. For example, you've interviewed Tony as well here on your podcast. They can help, especially the older generation, become their own sovereign individual, because it's a bit of a steep learning curve. But people may get into the ETF and they realize, okay, this is hope, this is safety, this is my life here that is on the line. And then somebody says, hey, holding the ETF is you're still a slave to the system. Like, no, what do you mean? Like, I'm not a slave. I'm holding Bitcoin. No, you're actually not holding Bitcoin. You're holding paper Bitcoin. And they'll probably get really angry and they'll be like, what do you mean? And some of them will listen and be like, oh, self-custody, what's that? And then they start asking questions. They're curious. I think that will take the longest. People are probably going to flock into these ETFs once the marketing kicks in and starts resonating. Then maybe it's another 1 or 2 cycles before people realize, okay, I've got the ETF. This is Bitcoin. It goes up forever, Laura. That's great. Fantastic. And then they realize, oh, but I'm actually not self-sovereign. Well, how do I become self-sovereign? For a select group of people, they will come over to the world's hardest asset, holding cold storage. And the more people that do that, like the 100 monkeys, once that starts happening, we have that catalyst effect. And that's how Bitcoin wins long-term, I guess. And I'll stop very shortly. But I guess the biggest thing is, not everything's going to happen in 2024, 25, 26. You know, it may be 2032, two more halvings from now. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're here now, if you're stacking now, you shouldn't be thinking about making dirty odd fiat. Like, I don't know how to say it in any other way. Like, it's trash. It's absolutely trash. If you've got the hardest asset now, all you need to do is stack, chill, at least for me, you know, and then say 2032 onwards, the laws, they may get worse for a while. Then we'll get a younger generation into power and be like, this is absolute BS, like Executive Order 6102. Took a long time for people not to be able to hold their own gold. Now they can hold their own gold again. That could definitely happen. So people just need to like zoom out, you know, when in doubt, zoom out and realize, okay, yes, they may get noisy. There's going to be both sides, the good and the bad. But Bitcoin is hope. It is that freedom. You just need to realize it may not happen in 2024, but 2024 and even what we're seeing now is going to be the start of that snowball that rolls downhill.
Amazing. You mentioned self-custody and Tony from the Bitcoin Way. I actually have him back on next
Awesome.
next week, and there is a good reason for that. Do you know Rick also, who joined the Bitcoin Way, who lost the 25 Bitcoin?
Yeah, I heard his story, man.
Yeah, and he joined the Bitcoin Way now, and I saw it, and I was like, "Hey, you want to jump on the podcast?" And he said yes, and we're now making a podcast where he is sharing his story, and also Tony is joining. And I want to make one video where I can send Bitcoin, send people there to learn about self-custody and the first steps into self-custody. And I think the story with Rick and the expertise with Tony, I think it will be great. I just had it in my mind. You also mentioned Elon Musk on X, and I think it's a interesting topic because Elon Musk is still hated from some Bitcoiners because of his actions, but he is one of the richest men alive, and he is into Bitcoin. That's, for me, it's 100% clear.
Of course.
Maybe as a content creator, like, I know I'm uploading my videos on X and on YouTube, and I noticed that it's way faster on X because there is no processing. I don't know what YouTube does with the video after it uploads and it processes, but it's like I need like an hour less on X because it's really fast, and it just feels that there is no filter on X. It's just my subjective feeling. I don't know what's really going on. Where do you see the future of social media going with X, with Nostra, with YouTube? Yourself are a content creator on those platforms, on both of them. What's your thoughts around Elon Musk X, future of social media?
Yeah, interesting. So one of the lead developers for Canva, lives next door. So he came around yesterday afternoon, and we were sort of having a chat about TikTok, YouTube, social media as well. So very recent conversation. Elon Musk is building the everything app. You know, he said, we've seen those videos where let's just copy WeChat, you know, like WeChat is the everything app in China. He's like, let's just copy it, and then they're going to improve on that and iterate. What Elon Musk is doing is giving a voice to, it's not perfect, man. Like, his free speech is not perfect. It's still, like, in my feed, in my For You, I will hardly ever see someone that does not have a blue check mark. Like, very rarely. Like, maybe 1 out of 20 posts in a row will be someone without a blue check mark. So it's pay to play. It's not free speech. But if you get that check mark and you pay to play, you're allowed to pretty much say whatever you want you know, as long as it's not a hate crime. And even that's a little bit loose, you know. Like, I know I've been pretty nasty towards Elizabeth Warren in the past. I'm sorry, I'm not sorry there, because she's an evil bitch. But I think people are going to realize, oh, like Tucker's back, Tate's back, Alex Jones is back. And whatever people think with them, it doesn't matter if we agree or not. There should be two sides of the conversation. Like, say, is Bitcoin going to pump or is it going to dump? No, it's never going to dump. Like, hang on, like let's take a moment, let's think of both sides and see everything from every angle. So instead of, people are going to realize that freedom is pretty important. It's been controlled for so long. Even Elizabeth Warren saying there's billionaires out there and they control media and things like that, talking about Elon Musk, making it too free for people. So I do see X as winning totally. Like today I called Mike, shout out to Mike today on Twitter, and it's the first time I'd ever used Twitter for calling somebody, the phone feature. And it was amazing. Like even from the ringtone, like the ringing that happens was the nicest ringtone that I've ever heard while waiting for the phone to dial, the dial tone. And because he's so like OCD, he's operating at such a high level. I think like we want him to bring back Bitcoin straight away. You know, it's not going to happen. He's fighting all these wars, all these fires. It's going to be slowly. Then what happens with the other platforms? Well, when TikTok came out, then YouTube started putting out short form videos. And then they're like, all right, we're really not making that much money from these. Where's our niche? And ultimately, Bitcoin is still long form videos, but they have changed their algorithms and stuff to be able to keep up with TikTok. And even myself, I find, you know, I'll listen, like I just listen on YouTube, but very rarely do I ever watch a YouTube video. I pay to be able to play. I have YouTube Premium, put it in, listen to it. But say I just want to chill out or whatever, which I don't know. When you're engaged, I don't really find any need to be able to escape or whatever. They'll listen to something about Tesla, talking about the numbers 369 or whatever being the code to the universe. And then there'll be a short about that video. I'll watch that short, and then it'll give me another short that's along a similar trajectory. And I'll go through and I'll watch a couple of those. I'm like, okay, like I've gone in a totally different direction, but out of those last 3 or 4 shorts that I've watched, I've enjoyed that topic. Let me go back into a long form side of things. So we're already seeing it adapting. Does YouTube keep up with Twitter is something that I think about a lot. I guess that's why I post on both places. The interaction on Twitter with people that you don't know is better. Like on Twitter, you can reach out to nearly anyone in the world, pretty much, whoever you want, you know. On YouTube, for example, I guess like for myself, and I can only speak for myself, in my comment section, when you're having like a subscriber base that's really solid and they're freaking amazing. Like I want to shout out to everyone that has subscribed. And you have these comments and you know them by name. You sort of got this little like back and forth that happens every day. I think it's probably deeper, but does that start happening on Twitter more and more? Like I guess like on Twitter, you put out a post pretty much like every post of yours that I see. I share them nearly every day, one of your posts on the news, you know. They always come up, but I may not comment as much on Twitter, whereas I think on YouTube, you probably get the community interaction a little bit more at this stage. TikTok, it's a psyop. It's just a disease for the brain. You know, what they show people here in the West is literally there to be able to distract them, to be able to dumb them down. Hopefully people start waking up and they don't get sucked in too much for it. But I don't really give TikTok any thought because I think it's destruction to society. Noster, what Jack Dorsey's doing, absolutely fantastic. It just doesn't have the user base there. Like you go on, I got an Noster and I don't know, just hardly ever use it. Same with Rumble. My videos automatically upload to Rumble, but I don't go on there because hardly anyone's there. Everyone's either on YouTube or they're on Twitter. And most people like yourself, you're on YouTube and Twitter. I'm on YouTube and Twitter. And I think those two in tandem. And so like when I stream, it streams separately, but you'll just be able to play the YouTube videos on Twitter. They're just going to be embedded and you're going to be able to watch them go full screen, listen to it, have it in your pocket or whatever. And that could be the way that Twitter just takes total market share. But then YouTube's going to try fight back as well. You know, we've got community posts and things like that. So they'll probably be in lockstep together, which will ultimately be beneficial. Definitely more freedom on places like, YouTube, but there's more freedom on Twitter or Rumble. But if we've got a message, and Bitcoin's the most important message, especially now in this time of humanity, if I need to limit myself, especially in the first couple of minutes of my video and not swear, I will, so that the video gets out to people, and then I can more naturally be myself. Certain things maybe you need to skirt around, but ultimately, what's the mission? To say what I want, or to be able to speak the truth as clearly as I can that I believe in, to be able to get the message out to as many people. And if I have to self-censor a little bit, I will, because ultimately it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us, the humanity, people that have been kept and are continuing to be programmed, and that slave mindset. So that's a very long-winded way, but probably YouTube and Twitter are going to grow together. Probably going to see a little bit more freedom on X. The rest of it, if you're on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen, please get off it straight away. It's no good.
Yeah, TikTok is definitely a mind virus. I myself distribute all the short form videos also to TikTok and Instagram, just because it's from my scheduling tool possibility. I don't even have the app installed, but I was like, if I can just post it, I might contribute to slightly better TikTok experience.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the people there watch one of the videos, one of the clips, and might wake them up. But personally, I think 98% of my time on X community and interacting with people. YouTube, I love for the long form format. I love watching podcasts. I love watching long form videos, diving deep into topics. YouTube is an amazing platform. And it's also really high quality. Like we also have to be clear, X is so much smaller than YouTube, also from a user base, from a channel point of view. And I just love X from the community. I think maybe on a Bitcoin community note only, maybe X is even bigger. I don't know. I feel
sure. No, definitely. Yeah.
Every Bitcoin I speak, they are all on X. But in general sense, YouTube is still way bigger. And if X actually wants to compete with YouTube on the long form videos, they have to bring so many features still, like watch later, like saving the videos, and an own video tab for X. But I think those things will come, and then it will be interesting to see. So you're really active on X, on YouTube with I think daily live streams. Are you doing it daily?
Yeah, so live streams Monday to Friday Australian time, which is probably Sunday to Thursday for people in the US, or on that side of the world, that time zone. And then I'll get a podcast out pretty much every Saturday my time. So there'll be a video from Sunday to Friday. There's sort of one day off there, but that podcast is, something that I'd do now in the, I'd film that during the week, get it edited. Not that I'm really editing that much anymore. Just find a couple of clips, play them at the start, and then get that out to people. Just as like you'd know, when you interview someone, you'll listen back to it yourself, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's a cool conversation. They'll say that one thing, and you're like, whoa, like people need to hear this. Like you want to put that at the start of the video. and then you just let the conversation roll. That's me, and yeah. So I guess 6 days a week content's coming out, but I go live, Monday to Friday for me, every day, and get out.
That's amazing. And I also saw that you have actually a lot of bright people also on the podcast. I saw Nat Brunel, Jason Meyer, Greg Foss, a lot of other people that I really respect in the Bitcoin community. What did you learn? Like, you not immediately started making videos. You first learned about the Bitcoin, and then after a while you started making videos. What did you learn while making those videos from those Bitcoin miners you interviewed? And maybe what was the key takeaways from them?
That it's, I guess one of the biggest things, that's a really, really good question, because everyone that gets into Bitcoin gets into it for a different reason, or they come from a different angle. Like Greg Foss, at some stage he'd trade up to $1 billion a day. Very different from Natalie Brunel, who is a traditional mainstream journalist. So I guess the biggest takeaway is Bitcoin is inclusive of absolutely everyone, male or female, fat or thin, whatever demographic you want to go out into. And there's so many different areas. Someone that's been in IT for a very long time may like that it's immutable after a block, like you're never going to change it again. The resources behind it, they may approach Bitcoin from the profitability or the non-profitability of mining, depending on how they set it up. Whereas other people come in from a gold or investment background and understand scarce assets. Other people are just realizing they're not making it day to day, working their fiat job, and they don't even understand what the word fiat means, before they get into Bitcoin. But once they get in, they realize, okay, this is why I was never getting ahead, is because they can print so much of this money. I guess that's probably the biggest takeaway, is Bitcoin is inclusive of absolutely everyone, and it's important for everyone. And we say fix the money, fix the world. Bitcoin fixes this. It's true. And like I said, it may not stop wars, but it'll stop them going on for as long or being profitable. I'd say that would probably be the biggest thing, Robin, is just how diverse and what circumstances. Like, say Tony, he's probably shared a little bit of his story with you, with what happened in Lebanon, and stuff there. Like, we're pretty privileged, like here in Australia, like really privileged. Even though I was very totalitarian for C19, the roads are good. The drinking water, I wouldn't drink it, but yeah, it's just nice roads, electricity, like all that stuff. Other people are really like living in very hard economic times. Like, say in Australia, if somebody doesn't want to work, and which is a mind virus in themselves, everyone should be using their capacity to be able to do something in the world. But if they don't, the government will give them enough money to be able to afford food, clothing, bloody alcohol, or whatever their vices are. Like, the government will give them enough money to be able to live at least a mediocre existence, where at other places in the world, sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work. The government will just shut the banks down overnight. And you're like, oh, okay, like I'm stuffed here. Like, what do I do? And then they come to Bitcoin. So I guess that, if that answers your question, it's just so diverse, and it's from everyone. And talking to like some of the smartest, brightest minds in Bitcoin, it doesn't matter where anyone wants to approach it from. There'll be something that will get them interested. We just need to find what they're interested in to be able to talk to them about that, and they'll come into it, and then they realize, okay, this is pretty important. This is pretty revolutionary technology.
Yeah, this is also something I noticed for, like, you're my number 13th guest, and I always prepare questions, and I always try to prepare a question that is suited for the person. But it actually would not be necessary to have interesting conversation, because it's always such a unique personality, and they always have a unique perspective on things. And I think if I just have the same, I don't know, 10 questions for every podcast episode would be still watchable, because there's some new things in there, and it's a unique experience. Like, I'm just starting out with like 13 interviews now.
You're
I'm
doing
really
great, bro. They're bloody awesome.
thank you for the. I'm looking forward to, like, when I'm hitting the 100 interview milestone from the
Yeah.
learnings there. I'm really looking forward to that. From As a content creator, you are giving your face out a lot, and as a
Yeah.
Bitcoiners, we are always really cautious about privacy, about KYC, about all that kind of stuff. How important is privacy for you? Or maybe to rephrase the questions, why aren't you hiding?
Because I know what I've done with my Bitcoin and where my Bitcoin is and how it's been looked after. And Bitcoin is the most important thing for humanity to be able to understand right now before it is too late.
So, what would you like? Is KYC something you are completely not doing with Bitcoin exchanges? Are you only buying peer-to-peer where there's no KYC? Where do you fall on the?
I'll stop you there. I won't go into it. So, like, I am ultimately very careful and very paranoid in what I do and do not say in regards to my Bitcoin stack, because I do have my face out there. For people, I guess the conversation that I had with Tony, they can go back and they can watch that episode. For some people, having KYC and non-KYC is a good idea. For other people, having 100% no KYC Bitcoin is a good idea. It's different and unique to every individual circumstance, and what I'm doing is not going to work for somebody else. People need to figure out what it is that works for them. And I know that's a little bit abrupt and it doesn't answer your question, but I guess that's me, because as a content creator, you do need to be very careful with what you do and make sure everything is where it should be and should be protected the way that it should be.
Yeah, totally fair. And I think your answer is actually a really good answer for people to listen to, because it just emphasizes how important it is to do the research their own, like, and do the hard work themselves. Like, don't just like, oh, I heard that Sean said and this and this and this I should do, then I do just this and this and this. Like, I think the answer mirrors the importance of the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just jumping on to what you were saying there as well, like, I will recommend Bitcoin sessions, BTC sessions on YouTube and Twitter, nearly every live stream. He talks about the best hardware wallets, what's good, what's bad. The only recommendation I'll make in regards to hardware wallets is stay the fuck away from Ledger. What a disgrace of a company. And it needs to be Bitcoin only. It needs to be Bitcoin focused. Aside from that, people need to go to BTC sessions to be able to do that. That's an expert in that field, and he's talking about everything. He's not talking about so much what he's doing, maybe with different little bits, but you want to go to the right place for the right education or information. And in regards to protecting it, your BTC sessions, if someone needs help with their whole stack, people like Tony from the Bitcoin Way and stuff. But the greatest thing about Bitcoin and people that have spent, say, like a minimum of 100 hours, so much of that mind virus, they've woken up from the matrix, they've taken that orange pill. They realize, oh, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Oh, and they're like, oh shit, this is scary. I need to take 100% self-responsibility. They don't want to do that, but they realize, okay, the government's not going to save me. My friends aren't going to save me. My family's not going to save me. My employment's not going to save me. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. And Bitcoin forces that upon you so much. And people will either put their head in the sand, but if they've put in 100 hours, they've at least got a little bit of drive to be able to unpack, okay, what is this thing? How do I do it? And they've probably been on Bitcoin Twitter, and they're hearing about GMOs and tap water and all the other little random things. Whether they agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. It just gets them to start questioning absolutely everything. So I think that's very important, and that's just natural and part of it. But someone that comes to you for advice, every video says it's not financial advice. What is advice is study Bitcoin. When they study Bitcoin, they'll realize, okay, there's something important here. I've, for so long in my life, when I heard about Bitcoin at $94, I wasn't taking responsibility for my life. I was, I was in a pretty bad way, and I blamed all my problems on the world around me and everyone else. And my mother, my father, my friends, my family. It was like it was them, it was they. Yes, there's a distortion and stuff going on, but the only way you can break free of it is to choose and act in a specific way where you can learn what is going on and then how to do it. But ultimately, it's that proof of work concept, Robin. It's there's proof of stake and stuff. Like, you get something for nothing. It's total BS. And I think that's what the lesson that Bitcoin teaches people.
That's a great line. What's for you next in the Bitcoin community? Do you have to wrap it slowly up the Bitcoin podcast? Do you have any things coming? Are you planning to write a book? Are you planning to launch something new, or just keep going with 6 videos a week? What amazing output, actually.
Yeah, so I'll keep the videos up, absolutely, for sure. So there's a lot of great Bitcoin books, Bitcoin Evangelism, B is for Bitcoin, the Fiat Standard, the Bitcoin Standard, Broken Money, and it goes on and on and on and on. Like, amazing books. I'd like to write probably not a book, but I am writing something, and I don't really know how to explain it. But when that comes out in say 12 or 12 to 18 months, it's probably not going to be for Bitcoiners. It's going to be something that a Bitcoiner can hand to their friends and family, because Bitcoiners have already put in the proof work. They're willing to read the books and stuff. For someone, I don't know if you've had this experience, Robin, but the Bitcoin Standard, I'd get the Bitcoin Standard and be like, hey, like, you need to read this one book. This one book's going to change your life. If somebody reads the Bitcoin Standard front to back, they're going to start questioning something, at least. They're just going to start asking a question, and one question leads to another question, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. But I give them the Bitcoin Standard, and the next day, the next week, a month later, they'd give it back to me and be like, thanks very much. I'm like, how'd you go with it? They're like, it's too much for me. I'm like, it's one book, bro. Like, just you couldn't read one book to potentially change your life. They're like, nah, man, nah, too hard. I'm like, seriously, because I've always been a big reader, so it doesn't make any sense to me. So then I'm like, okay, how? Because I still advocate for books, so I'm like, all right, what book can I get out there? What can I give people so they just do one thing? And now my go-to books, and I've got them both here, Bitcoin Evangelism and B is for Bitcoin. For someone that knows absolutely nothing, B is for Bitcoin, they can read it in a weekend. It's this thick. Like, it's tiny. It's a centimeter thick. It does not take long to read. A slow reader, maybe it takes them a month, but it's pretty, like, it's ABC of Bitcoin. And it's broken down so simply. One book, once people start reading and they wake up a little bit, then they ask a question, then you give them another book, and they're like, okay. And then they've put in 13 hours worth of work in there, and they've started watching the podcast. But for those people that aren't willing to spend that amount of time to read that book, I want that one stepping stone before. And I guess that's what I'm working on, aside from my videos. Yeah.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to that. We're having an end routine on the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the question, I'm a little afraid that it will pop up a whole new topic, and the podcast will go on for another hour. But I
I'll be
will
quick.
still ask it. What will be the effects of CBDCs on Bitcoin, and what's your thoughts on CBDCs in general?
They're an evil tool by the elites, those in power at the moment. They are coming. There's nothing that we can do. People are trying, and people are actually doing really good work. Even Senator Ron DeSantis and stuff. People are fighting against them, so we're seeing that. This agenda that's coming from the World Economic Forum to have CBDCs by 2030, it's pretty scary. Without going too deep, when people are in CBDCs, they really are going to be able to have an even higher level of control now if they want to. And even today on my news, I said CBDCs aren't going to come out and the next day they just switch off your bank account or prevent you buying gasoline or whatever. But once they have the technology, they will want to use it at some stage. So I guess the biggest message is prepare as much as possible now by stacking Bitcoin. And that's why this time now in history is so important. And maybe that for some people is to have KYC and non-KYC Bitcoin. For everybody that's listening, it has to be Bitcoin and self-custody. And that's how you fight against it. We're still going to use bloody monopoly money to go down to the shops, at least in the short term. Is that monopoly money CBDC or not? It doesn't really matter. It'll be what it'll be. There are people, even Dennis Porter, doing a huge amount of work at the Satoshi Action Fund. You know, there are people fighting the good fight. Even Vivek Ramaswamy, that's going for the US president. People are fighting. They're going to push it. Who wins? Oh, fingers crossed, man, it doesn't happen. But say it does. Say there's only a 10% chance instead of a 90% chance of it happening. Wouldn't you still want to prepare yourself? And it's Bitcoin, ladies and gentlemen. Just stack and chill. Red days, green days, it really doesn't matter. It's, as Nico again says, it's Bitcoin or slavery. So I don't know, fight the good fight, silently opt out and choose freedom.
That's I think this is the best way to end the podcast. It was a real pleasure, Sean, to have you on. You are one of the greatest Bitcoin minds for me personally. I listen to you. I love listening to you and seeing your stuff. Where are people getting to know to you in contact to? Is it like X? YouTube is the best place for you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so really quickly, mate, you're a bloody legend. Like as I said, I bring up your posts all the time on my news. The information you get out and some of your tweets is absolutely incredible. Even Michael Saylor will retweet some of your tweets. So if you're watching Robin for the first time, make sure you're following him. If you want to reach me directly, tag me on Twitter. But the best place to be able to interact is well, both Twitter. I guess I sort of want to take back what I said with Twitter. There is a huge amount of engagement on Twitter. So you can message me, you can DM, you can tag me on Twitter. Obviously, where I put most of my time and focus is on YouTube, which is G'day Bitcoin there. But yeah, either Bitcoin or Twitter. It's whatever way works for people. It's pretty easy. I'm pretty reachable. Just don't. I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, we will go on for another hour.
Perfect. Let's leave it at that. Goodbye. Thanks for being on.
Pleasure.